Hello folks, sorry if the audio is a bit weird because I am in a hotel room at the moment with the missus who's gone to get a shower, so I thought I'd come on and record some Hobby Nightmares because I've got nothing better to do with my time. So, again, apologies if the acoustics is a bit off, but there we are. If you like what I do, subscribe, and also, we're not running out of Hobby Nightmares, but we are getting to the last dozen or so Hobby Nightmares in the mailbag, so make sure you go over there to hobbynightmares@gmail.com and you give me an email with your Hobby Nightmare in it if you want it to be read out over the next few weeks. Let's jump in, shall we, to Robin, who says, "Hey again, Mr. Exile. Robin here again. First, I want to thank you for reading my last story." Well, you're welcome. "Your kind words spoke directly to my heart, so thank you. Now, I don't often talk about my politics." Oh, here we go. Here we go. "Because I am in business and I don't judge people for such things. Once in a while, though, something happens during a game that just sticks out and makes me angry over certain political expressions. Don't get me wrong, I believe in the rights of free speech, but I also believe that people should have better judgment. This story will give you the smallest, safe taste of what it's like living in my area." Alright, okay. "It was a nice gaming day. The store had 2 tables of board games and 4 tables of 40k, running pretty smoothly. At least 2 additional tables had card games, trading and deck building. For reference, there is 2,000 square feet of retail space up front, which openly leads to another 2,500 square feet of tables set up for gaming. I was doing a painting session with a World Eaters player. He was painting up his Exalted 8-bound, and I was working on the trim of my Forge Fiend for my Black Legion army. I attach a picture of what it looked like that day, knowing that you love seeing our paint jobs. It looks better now. I do, but I'm going to start. Today is Thursday. I'm recording for Friday, so I'm actually going to start the looking over people's models and stuff next week, because obviously it's a lot harder to do it when I'm not in the house at my desk. Do you know what I mean? So next week is when I'll start. If you want your stuff showing out on the channel, then please make sure that you send it in to me first and foremost, and that you have your name on there clearly delineated. And yeah, so don't send them in with your Hobby Nightmares if you can help it. Just send them in on their own, and I'll have a little look at them next week. All right, cool. I was focused on his layering when I heard it. The usual dull noise of having a few dozen players stopped quietly. The store had gone deafeningly silent. I could swear the radio felt how thick the air was, as even the music seemed to pause. My painting student had stopped moving and was just staring over my shoulder. I capped my paint pot and turned in my chair to see him. "Feel free to take a sip here, it's about to get serious." Okay. As I'm writing, I just took a nervous sip of coffee. The memory, not by itself, but it triggers other experiences, still shakes me to my core. A man had entered the store dressed as Donald Trump. Oh, no. You can't do it. I was expecting something like super serious and super bad. But it is bad, you know what I mean. I stood up in the all too likely case that this, deleted several options here, guy started any trouble. In my experience, these right-wing extremists just love causing issues. I carefully looked him over, checking for concealed carry. Sure enough, the back of his pants was slightly bulging with the classic indicator. I took a quick glance around, seeing that most of the players had taken a seat and were watching, wide-eyed. The few exceptions were myself, a single 40k player, and the manager, who was standing behind the counter, phone at the ready. I felt a little better having seen exactly which 40k player was standing at the ready. This is a beast of a man, literally an ex-rugby player who is now an indie wrestler. Very likely to go pro in my opinion. He's a great friend and exactly who I want by my side should anything untoward go down. As the ordered off of Wish.com Trump slowly walked into the gaming area, I prepared, knees slightly bent and loose, hands open at my sides. Thought of recent incidents in the news spiraled through my mind. I even had an image of a headline flash through my mind: friendly local game store owner rolls his last dice defending his players from, a shooting, essentially. My eyes dash between the four men standing around. I see my Primarch-sized comrade is at the ready as well. Either of us could easily subdue this cosplayed rubbish pile if he moved the wrong way. The Donald walked through, sneering at our tables. He made eye contact with me, then looked at my buddy, and I think he got a bit spooked, seeing that he was outsized twice over by each person staring him down. I saw a stream of thoughts run through his eyes. It's amazing how much you can say without ever actually speaking a single word. He made the right choice this time. Turning on his heels, he walked several shaky meters in a straight line to the exit. It was several heavy moments after he walked out the door, and I believed he was not returning before you could feel the tension break. It seemed like every person in the store breathed a collective sigh of relief. I walked over to my tall friend and thanked him for having my back. He simply said, "Yeah man, always." He then returned to his custodies at the game, and he was happily losing against the 12-year-old Necron player. I absolutely love having this guy in the store. I went around and calmly checked on every table, making sure everybody was returning to normal players and such. I then went into my office for a quick moment to quietly shake off the experience so I could continue the day. In closing, situations like this are not uncommon. I find myself in the ready to deal with the problem stance all too often. Perhaps at some point I'll write up a story or a few where I actually had to deal with a problem, but that's for another time. Thank you, my friend, for doing what you do. You're a gentleman and a scholar. Thankfully yours, Robin. Cheers, mate. Yeah, I mean, I can only say that was like some sort of a dare. Somebody's on a stag do or something. You know what I mean? Like they're on a stag do and they get dared by their friends to go into a game store or something. I don't know. If you didn't know the guy as well, it just seems like a really random thing for somebody to do, in my opinion. Anyway. Connor says, "You can call me Connor." Thank you very much, I have done. "Hey North, I've been watching your channel for the past few months and I've enjoyed listening to your hobby nightmares and listening to your advice. Also congrats on hitting 20,000 subscribers." Thank you. I don't exactly have a nightmare to share, it's more of a problem with the actual hobby itself. Around 3 to 4 months ago, I discovered a Warhammer by accident as I found a Warhammer shop in my town centre and noticed all the models and terrain they had in their display window. I had a look around and ended up buying a Space Marine / Tyranid starter set to get me started. As I began to get heavily into the hobby, I immediately noticed the insane price tags for pretty much everything in the shop. Even the smaller box sets seemed astronomical in price. Welcome to the hobby. That's all I can say. I've scoured online for cheap box sets and other bits and bobs, and I found it quite difficult to find much. I've engrossed myself into the world of Warhammer and all the lore it has to offer. However, I can't help but feel I've been priced out of the hobby, and I'm certain I'm not the only one who feels like this. I understand the hobby has never really been exactly cheap to get into, but I just feel confused as to where they get their prices from. I was just wondering if you knew any websites or places where the prices are a little more reasonable to the average Joe. Thanks for reading and have a cracking day. Okay, this is a hobby nightmare. Even though it is a question, it is a hobby nightmare because this person's struggling to even start to get into it. I can't really tell you any specific place. I know Composite Games do. You know, they're a part of the channel. They're quite good to go with if you want cheap models. But again, any online retailer like Wayland Games are good. Goblin Gaming's good. You know, any online retailer will be good for you to go and get your games and get your things that you need. Those would be the cheapest ways to get it officially. You know, if you want official Warhammer models straight out the box, brand new, those are the cheapest ways to get it without going second hand. If you go second hand, eBay would be good as long as you get like trusted sellers. eBay is good. There are lots of model exchange websites you can go on. I personally, if I was you, I would wait until your birthday or Christmas, or save up money if you really want it. Do you know what I mean? Save up for a month or two and get yourself a nice one of the starter box sets for the army that you want. Right? This is how I would do it. I would throw myself into the lore. Throw myself into reading, throw myself into lore videos, all that fun stuff, right? Maybe even video games of the setting. And when you've focused in on something that you think is cool, that you want, you know, you've already been saving your money month by month. So take 2 months. Take 2 months of reading time. Just go out and have some fun. Read a load of lore. Watch a load of lore videos, right? Make notes. Especially if you're a lore guy, make notes on the lore that you want to write. That'd be really cool. So you literally just go home and you get your computer and you write down all the lore that you think's cool, that you might want to write, and make loads of notes of army concepts, of things that you might want to do, colour schemes you might want to try, right? Then start looking up tutorial videos and how to do the colour scheme that you're thinking of. And then finally, when you're ready, after a couple of months, you've saved up enough money to go and get your first box and your first paints. And this is exactly what you do. And once you've done that, you've not put so much time into the hobby that you're going to regret it forever, right? You've put a load of work in to make sure that the hobby's for you, because you've already done your research, you know what you want to do, and you know what armour you want. And when you start buying your models, you're not going with a huge purchase. You're getting the starter box set for the army that you want, which is like your combat patrol or whatever, right? Or any small box. You've got your paints that you want, because you already know the paint scheme that you want to do, right? You got your spray paint, you got your essentials, and you go. And you've spent maybe what, £80? I'd say 80 quid for a combat patrol / start collecting, right? No matter where you've gone, 80 quid. So maybe let's be generous. Maybe you spent £100. So to get started in the hobby, you spent £100. That to me is doable. If you can save month on month, like £5 a month, £5 a week, right? Yeah, it's doable. It is doable. It's what it is. You know, 5, 10, 15, 20. That's 40. So in 3 months, you can get. You're literally ready to go and buy all your models and get started. So that's what I would do, and that's what I did when I got back into the hobby a few years ago. I actually sat down and read, and finally I settled on the Astral Blades / Void Talons as an idea that I wanted to do as a Space Marine chapter. So I did it. I went off and did it, and I did loads of research, and eventually, you know, got it on the go. And it was fun, and I enjoyed it, and it was brilliant. And that's what I would do if I were you, alright? That's how I would get into the hobby. It is expensive, but don't be put off by, you know, this one box here is £35 for 10 models. That's ridiculous, and I agree. It is stupid. Games Workshop prices are stupid. They're ridiculous. But in terms of you starting out in the hobby, I don't think. I think the prices are ridiculous, but I don't think they're insurmountable. If you're ready to save, you know what I mean. Especially if you've got a decent job, where you go out drinking with your friends and stuff. If you can afford to go out drinking with your friends, and you can afford to go, you know, and do other things. You can afford to work on your car. You can afford to go and buy bits for your PC. You can afford to buy video games on Steam. If you can afford to do that, you can afford Warhammer, right? I'm just saying, if you can afford to buy a game on Steam that you want to buy, that's just come out, that's 50, 60 quid, you can afford Warhammer. All you need to do is, instead of buying that one video game, don't buy it this month. And then next month, don't buy that again, and at the end of that next month, you can now buy your Warhammer, right? That's what you need to do. I agree with you, the prices are ridiculous, but if you want an entry into the hobby, they're not insurmountable, right? They're insulting, they're ridiculous, and they keep going up. Don't get me wrong, I think that's stupid, and it shouldn't happen, but, you know, I think there are ways for you to get in the hobby without causing you to remortgage your house. Anyway, Gabe says, "Hello, Sir North. For the purposes of anonymity, please just call me Gabe, as in short for Gabriel. I am glad to say I have come into the dismay of witnessing my first hobby nightmare, or at least that's what I'm calling it. I'll let you be the judge. But first, we need to set the scene. I would consider myself at this point to come under the category of a competitive Warhammer player. I joined back to the scene and started playing properly at the start of 10th edition, with the release of the Leviathan box set, and then switched to a certain bolter shooting overzealous burn them in the Holy Fire kind of army, which is where I joined a competitive group at my friendly local game store, and the sky has been the limit ever since. If I remember by the end of this, I'll do my best to attach pictures. Don't worry though, North, I'm not one of those people that copy and paste the most meta list, then wonder why it doesn't carry me to first. I design my lists myself. And while including units that are considered meta, I always try to include one that's a bit of a wild card. I love those, just before I carry on, I love those kinds of units that people add. They're like a little sign-off. Do you know what I mean? It's like your little flourish. So you got your meta list, but you got like a really random unit, like a some Howling Banshees or whatever. If you're Eldar, like a little flourish to say, well, I just like those models. They're my dudes. Though it may not be overly strong, I'm damn well good at using it to its full potential, and find it's what gives the list a personal feel rather than just the most broken stuff of the term. I don't know whether you can hear that, North, but if you listen closely, the tea is calling. Have a sip of tea. Thank you very much. I will do. I will do. Lovely stuff. Anyway, I'll stop rambling and get on to the hobby nightmare. So this all happened at a local tournament that was run by somebody in my hobby group. It was a usual 3 rounds, each lasting 2 hours and 45 minutes, and rankings were based on wins, then points. I arrived there with my sisters and find my first opponent. For the purpose of this, we'll call him Mike. Mike seemed like an alright guy, no traits of a neckbeard. It seemed like he was a casual hobbyist and an overall chill guy. Or so it seemed. We said our hellos, what we were running, shook hands, and began the game. Now, here's where things start to turn a bit. This guy was slow, and I don't mean stuff like shaking the dice for a bit before rolling to get a more randomised result. We're talking spending 5 minutes thinking out his plan of attack, 15 minutes checking threat ranges of my models, and finally checking the ranges of his models with the tape measure before moving them. Now, I wouldn't mind this on key models like his support weapons. He was running Eldar, as they were the biggest threats, but this was for every single unit of his army, and he was running Eldar as if they were a Horde army. Needless to say, we just about finished turn 2 by the end of the first round limit. Oh my god. Don't they have rules against pre-measuring in tournaments? Guys, if you can, in the comment section down below, let me know. I swear they do. I swear there are rules where they say you can't pre-measure, or you need your opponent's permission to pre-measure something when it's not your turn. Do you know what I mean? I'm sure I remember that from somewhere, like another Hobby Nightmare or something. But yeah, you're not really allowed to pre-measure. You move your models, check they're in range, then fire. Right? You only measure to check if they're in range, and you only do that once you've moved them. Do you know what I'm saying? Because that's how a general would do it on the field. You'd send your unit somewhere, and they'd say, I need you to snipe those guys over there, so get into range. So your guys would run into range, and if they're not in range, they can't fire, right? I think that's why it's there, and it's also much quicker than if you're pre-measuring every single unit you've got. That's ridiculous. But let me know in the comment section down below. I may be wrong. Anyway, the second thing was unit sizes and proxies. Unfortunately, the models I ordered beforehand to finish off my list never came in time, so I had to proxy a Predator chassis which had a big sponsons on the sides of it in place of an immolator that did not. He was proxying striking Scorpions, which had the 25mm bases instead of the new bases, which were larger in size. If you know about the inch behind the wall strat that is used in Warhammer tournaments, then you know where this is going. I don't. So on my turn, I drive my proxied immolator through a 3-inch gap between a piece of terrain and the board edge. I was then stopped by Mike, where he said, "You can't fit that tank through there. The bits on the sides are overhanging off the board and would hit the terrain as well." Now, I would have accepted this if I hadn't practiced on this board layout before I knew a Rhino, same chassis as an immolator, could fit through a 3-inch gap. I even measured the width of a Rhino to show him it was 3 inches and could fit through the gap, but according to him, it would still overhang and would not fit through. He let me move it back and move it forwards, though it was now in the perfect range of his support weapons, and I had no direct way to get to the right objective in no man's land, while also now giving it a terrible spot to deploy. Least to say, there was a sour taste in my mouth after that. Before we move on, I'm betting that those striking Scorpions are something's gonna happen here. You just know where people like this are gonna go, right? Hypocrites. Hobby hypocrites. This guy's going to try and get an advantage from his base size, I'm telling you now. Speaking of flavour, now is a great time to take a sip of that golden elixir called Yorkshire tea. Thank you very much. The unit sizes only got worse. So during our game, I was constantly asking him if his unit was supposed to be an inch off the wall of ruins. In one case, I deep strike the Seraphim squad with flamers to cook up a fresh batch of swooping hawk. Only the flamers from the squad could see them, though as they were pressed against the wall. So, after their shooting, I asked him if they were supposed to be an inch off the wall, to which he said yes, and moved them back an inch, and now the entire squad can see the unit, so would have been able to shoot. I, of course, was not allowed to shoot them now, as I did not declare it. So his turn rolls around, and he obliterates a rhino and charges my sister squad with a squad of striking scorpions. Here we go. He puts them in the ruin on the other side of the wall to base with my sisters. Now, if you're not familiar with standard tournament terrain, on the inside of ruined walls, there's usually a platform on the bottom which is about an inch in length. It's a good marker to show the model is an inch away from the wall of the base that is not on this platform. I say to him, they're an inch away from the wall. You'd need to go around the wall to base with them. He responded, yeah, but the base of my model clearly fits in the gap between your squad and the wall. What did I tell you? What did I tell you? Hobby hypocrites. Rules for thee, but not for me. This goes back and forth until I remember and say to him, that's because you're using 25mm bases. The models don't have them normally, so you wouldn't be able to base if they weren't proxies. If you'd like, you can move them back and declare a charge on my Arcos over there. You can even re-roll the charge. He got a 5 and barely made it in. He said, no, if I knew they were an inch away, I wouldn't have shot the rhino previously. Let's say they get into combat regardless of the charge, but they're around the back instead. This is why I don't do tournaments, man. You know, the amount of petty stories that I hear of people who just don't get the spirit of the game, who don't get it. They just don't understand it, right? Again, rules for thee, but not for me. I know I should have stood my ground and refused, but I was getting tired of this and just wanted to either get on with the game or finish it and leave. I'd recommend taking another sip of tea as it gets worse. So much worse. Oh my god, I thought we were like near at the end there when you were talking that way. Okay. So time ran out and the current score was 25-36 in his favour. So when time was called and lunch break was on the horizon, I said to this guy, let's just talk through the last 3 rounds of combat and what probably would have happened. I started to pick up a secondary mission. He puts my hand with the card down on the table and says, it's not worth drawing cards, as the game is too uncertain at this point, and anything could happen. We'll just submit the score for what it is. So, yeah, he just wants to win then. Well, at this point, mate, I'd just be like, oh, so you're happy with you winning, yeah? Yeah, what a fucking surprise. So he submits the score on the app, and in case you haven't gathered, I was not happy. Yeah, exactly. This feels like a cheap win on his end, and he had deprived me of points just to get the first jump ahead while he still could. Yeah, because your points are what separate you, right? So if you have the same amount of wins as somebody else, you go on the amount of points you've scored. This guy's a douchebag, right? So our subject here, if just to actually explain what's going on for those of you who have maybe switched off or have never been to a tournament before. If you have like 3 wins and somebody else has 3 wins, then you count out the amount of points you've had in your games throughout the day, and the person with the highest goes above the others, who have the same score. It's like in football, you have goal difference, that kind of thing. This guy doing this basically takes away our submitters' right to make more points up, right, to get more points on the board. In other words, he's a selfish dickhead, and he's a terrible Warhammer player. But the cherry on the cake is yet to come. After he submitted the scores, he turned to me and said, if we wished that game, you were clearly going to win in that game. Sorry, if we finished that game, you were clearly going to win in that game. I was fucking pissed. So not only did he prematurely finish the game and screw me over at 25 victory points, he fully well knew he was going to lose, but shut it off early to simply get a cheap win and deny me my further points. Afterwards at lunch, I mentioned this to the guys as they were shocked I only got 25 victory points after what was supposed to be a full game, and I warned them about this guy. Now North, not all tournament players are terrible like this one guy. My next 2 games were against a demon player and then a guard player. I had great fun in both and went on a bit of a comeback streak and finished the weekend 2 for 1, coming in 10th. In my last game, I was on a table next to Mike and noticed the guy he was up against had pulled the chess clock out and was timing everything good. Good. After everything was packed up and awards were giving out, I asked the tournament organiser about this guy, and it was noted by many people he was extremely slow in resolving his turn, and in his last game he ran out of time on the clock extremely quickly, and his opponent only allowed him to walk through his turn, and as a result was told you are fully within your rights to pull out a clock during a tournament if you presume they are being slow. He ended up losing his last game quite badly towards the end of this, and ended up placing 1 below me, 11th. As much as I'd want a rematch against this guy to absolutely body him on the tabletop, I'd prefer just not to be matched up with him again, as that had probably had to be one of the worst games I've ever played of Warhammer. At least now I know how to avoid him. And that's all I've got for now. Can't wait to hear this while starting a force of the angriest Red Boys in the coming future. Thanks for everything you do here, Gabe. Here's the thing, man. Here's the thing. If I ever did a Northern Exile tournament, there's an idea. Northern Exile tournament, the Northern Exile Open. That'd be cool, wouldn't it? Which of you would actually travel to that? Because those of you at the end of the video, this is the last Hobby Nightmare I'm reading, are the ones the dedicated listeners. Which of you would travel to a Northern Exile tournament if it's in the UK somewhere? Let me know. But if I was going to do my own tournament, I would have a list, okay? And you could come to me, the TO, and say, listen, I didn't like playing against this guy, didn't like it at all, so please, in our next tournament, don't match me with him, We take your name, take his name, we go, right, that is no longer a match that's allowed. We keep them away from each other, do you know what I mean? So person A, person B, person A didn't like playing with person B, they no longer play together. That would be a really good way of doing it. And I wonder if that's a system that tournament organisers use. If you've ever done a tournament and you've organised one, then let me know in the comment section down below if you've ever done that before. Anyway, that is it for today. I think my missus is hiding in the bathroom and doesn't want to come out because she thinks she might distract me. You can come out, Hello? You can come out. Yeah, I think she's hiding because she doesn't want to disrupt me whilst I'm doing my Hobby Nightmares. How ignorant. I don't think she likes you guys. Anyway, I love you a long time. I will speak to you some more over the weekend, maybe possibly on Sunday, I don't know, but I will be back on Monday for some more Hobby Nightmares. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend and have a good one. Bye now.